Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of Abuse Recovery Success. Today, I'm really excited because we've kind of got a different and unusual guest, someone who is really science-backed, full of information, and I think is going to really educate us today. But not only that, she's a survivor and a thriver. I'm going to introduce her shortly. But before we dive in, I'll leave you waiting. Today, I just really want to thank you guys for being a part of this podcast. We've really grown through the last few seasons, and we're now in studio. We're getting great audio, great video. We're launching our YouTube channel, and I couldn't be happier to have such an inspiring guest today. We've got Gill, a scientist and a podcaster. Gill, welcome to Abuse Recovery Success. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited for the listeners to kind of get to know a little bit more about you and your journey. So please, without further ado, share with us your story, strength, hope, and who you are today.
Yeah. So when I was young, I was bullied pretty badly for all of middle and high school. I never had friends really or was invited to anything. So that protected me from a lot of normal teenage behavior. I really just studied and went to bed early. And then when I went to college, I still didn't go to parties. That was never a thing that I did. I was from the bullying. I was really conditioned for people not to like me. So I didn't put myself out there. It wasn't something that I even thought as an option. And it took me some time to unlearn that. And then I was able to just return to my old self. But I never went to parties. I never drank. In college, I was really just obsessed with being thin. That was the number one priority. Number two priority was getting the degree. But yeah, being thin was my life's goal. That was what I was really, really passionate about. I spent so much time researching how to be thin and thinking of different diets and hanging out in GNC in the diet section over there. And then yeah, alcohol, even when I turned 21, alcohol and being thin, I knew wasn't a good combination. So I never considered drinking. And then I went to graduate school and everybody drank. Even the professors drank. We all partied together. And I didn't drink. And I immediately was like, I am weird. I'm an outlier. No one's going to like me. And no one's going to want to hang out with the one non drinker. So I started trying just what my friends were getting. And I started to I'll have the same thing. And as soon as I felt that first buzz, I was like, wow, now I know why everybody likes to drink so much. Um, and yeah, it was just downhill immediately. I didn't progress into any type of problem. It was already there before I started drinking. So I already had no control. I was drinking way too much and not understanding what was a good amount to drink, and getting really sick all the time, publicly on a date. Very embarrassing things. And then I met my husband pretty quick after I started drinking, maybe a month later. And our relationship progressed really fast. 4 months in, we were already talking about getting married. And 9 months after meeting, he proposed. But when things got really serious, I wanted to be healthy for him, to start a life together. And that prompted me to go to therapy for some help letting go of all this dieting mentality and obsession. I wanted to be able to cook for my husband and also eat it, because I know he's not going to eat, diet food. And as I started to get better with the food related issues, I started drinking a lot more. So I just swapped them really. And um, less than a year later, I was a daily drinker. Less than a year after that, my tolerance had doubled. I was a teacher. for a couple of years, and teaching is very, very stressful. There's a lot of hours. There's usually not like a lunch break or anything like that. And I would drink to relieve the stress. That was what I believed alcohol did for me. So I drank every day because I had high amounts of stress every day. And once my tolerance doubled and I was making two very strong drinks instead of one, I recognized like maybe something is going on here because you probably shouldn't be drinking this much. It's probably not a good thing. And my husband doesn't drink this much. Um, so I started trying to moderate. So I was 24 at the time, and I would Google how to moderate. I would take the Am I an Alcoholic quiz and, kind of lie on it a little bit. And yeah, no matter what I did, I couldn't moderate. Um, and I just kept doing this for years and years and believed, like, I was really convinced that if I just practiced starting and stopping enough, I would be able to do that naturally. And the way that I was successful with that is only buying the alcohol that I'm going to drink. And then when it ran out, I would stop drinking. So that really doesn't count as
Yeah.
starting and stopping. But that was my success. And I was always really proud of those days. So the years went by, and teaching was still very high stress. I was still like constantly messing up. I never intended to get drunk. It was always accidental, multiple times a week, accidental for years. And I think when I was around like 27 ish, so about 5 years into my drinking, I started to see some mental health issues come up. So I was really depressed, and I decided that teaching is why I drink so much. So I quit teaching. And because I have two science degrees, I went and got a job in a lab. And I was like, I'm not going to have to drink that much anymore because this isn't as stressful. And I made more money, so it was less stressful financially. And my drinking did decrease, but it was still a lot. I was still accidentally getting drunk all the time. So there wasn't a big improvement. And since I didn't have to work so many hours as a teacher, I went back to therapy. And I remember I sat down in my first session and I was like, I am worried that I might be an alcoholic. What can I do? And she was like, well, why don't you not drink for a week and we will just see how that is? And I knew I had to look at her next week in person and tell her if I drank or not. So I didn't drink. And that was the first time that I took any time off because even if I was sick, even if I was on antibiotics, no matter what, I was still drinking every day. So I did the week and it was fine. And then we decided I wasn't an alcoholic. So I just went back to my old life of drinking every day because a therapist says I'm not an alcoholic now. So that is serious. That's not just me or a quiz online. And I stopped going to therapy and, continued doing what I was doing. And then I developed anxiety, which I have never had in my life. I know that I'm very fortunate to not have to struggle with that. So I started just staying up all night long, like panicking, and the room would like zoom out, and I felt really far away from everything. It was very scary. And depression just got worse and worse and worse. And eventually that became suicidal thoughts. And so I would accidentally get drunk, and then I would wake up in shock at like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I would immediately start with the anxiety and immediately start hating myself and um, like telling myself really scary things. And one day that scared me enough that I said, I can't drink for 90 days. I just can't. This is scary. I can't continue this way. And that was actually just about 2 years ago. I think next week or the week after
Wow.
will be 2 years ago that happened. And I didn't drink for 90 days. And I had a lot of stressful experiences during that time, like parties and people trying to give me
Mm-hmm.
drinks, but I didn't do it. And I found out about halfway through that the challenge was going to end the day before my birthday. So I thought, this is fate. Like, this is going to fix me. I'm going to be cured from this 90 days and
Mm-hmm.
then I can drink normally like everybody else. I believed it. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous, like looking back, but I believed it. I was so convinced. And I drank on my birthday on day 91. And then I actually did moderate. I had 2 glasses of wine a week on Saturday night. And it wasn't something that I was like fighting off on the other days. That was all I did. And I was so pumped about it. And then my husband and I went on a vacation
Oh,
and we
okay.
went on a cruise. And when you cruise, you can drink
Yeah.
from the moment you wake up to the moment that you go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, this is a special occasion. I'm just going to, be on
Mm-hmm.
vacation and then go home and go back to normal. So I drank every day on vacation. And when I came home, I couldn't moderate anymore. I was right back to the beginning, to before I did the 90 days. The anxiety immediately came back. The suicidal thoughts immediately came back. And I struggled for like about 4 more months. And it was horrible. I started having to miss work because I wouldn't like allow myself to sleep, which I now realize is like a form of self-harm. And I would force myself to stay up and think about how like I'm the worst. And eventually, I got so scared of the suicidal thoughts that I told my husband, I can never drink ever again. And that 90 days helped me realize that no matter how much time goes by, nothing's going to change. Like maybe I can moderate, but the very first test, I will be the same again. And that has given me a lot of peace. When I said that to my husband, I felt so calm, even though it was a really scary thing to be sober. And I was worried everyone would tell me that I was an alcoholic. And thank goodness I stopped. But I did feel at peace. By day 2 of sobriety, I had no anxiety, no suicidal thoughts. And yeah, it's been next week will be 16 months of sobriety. And even though it's hard and like I have the feeling that I want to be normal, I want
Mm-hmm.
to be just like everybody else, because I'm the only one that I know in real life that doesn't drink. Um, Alcohol just isn't an option. So it's not something that I consider and fight off or have cravings for. Like it's not an option because I believe if I drink, I am risking my life. So I think pushing it that far like sucked obviously because it was miserable, but
Mm-hmm.
it has really made the decision very strong and my sobriety really, really strong.
Yeah. I mean, I relate to so much of what you said. I feel like, well, first let me say 16 months. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Just honestly, I know exactly where you're coming from on not feeling normal or feeling different. And, I talk about this all the time in the podcast, but just finding, different circles, different pockets of joy. I no longer feel like the outcast. I will definitely tell you that first year plus, and you've probably felt through this as well, like just feeling like I didn't fit in at things and feeling different and like maybe as much options weren't open to me. But now, I kind of giggle and think, I'm more effective than half of these people out here because at the end of the day, I'm not clouded by alcohol. alcohol or any other substance. I don't have something that takes me out of my body, numbs me. I don't have something making me feel sick the next day. And I'm talking about just general drinking in our country and how it is very prevalent. And even people without alcohol problems can imbibe pretty regularly. And that does take a detour in our life and how we behave and act. So, my dear, I have a couple questions for you. You talk a lot about the 90 days and what that did for you. What was it like that first 90 days? Not the 90 days now that are a part of the 16 months, but did you do anything for your recovery as far as like an AA or listening to certain things? Like what did you do to get you through each day? Because that's always, that initial journey is really hard.
I was very stubborn.
Okay.
I didn't do anything.
Oh, wow.
And because of that, I suffered through a lot of it. And I missed a lot of the positives that I saw the second time around. So I just spent most of the time really angry and jealous of everybody that could drink, and I couldn't. And I just kind of tried to hide away and just not drink by myself. And the dream of being able to drink normally at the end is what made it doable, because I knew you are doing this so that you can continue to drink forever. And it was just worth it for me. But the second time around, I did see a therapist and utilize a lot more resources.
Great. And then tell me about this husband. You've been with him for a while, and it sounds like, gosh, he really fell in love with you during your drinking. He's been with you through the journey. Does he drink? Does he not drink? Tell me about how that relationship either crippled or hurt you in the beginning, maybe helped you through. Like everyone's story is different. So tell the listeners how that relationship has evolved for you.
Yeah, he's a really good guy. I was immediately like a problem drinker, and he saw it. He didn't recognize it, but he stayed with me and loved me through all of it, through all the embarrassing times and all the times that he had to take care of me. And when things got really bad, he really stepped up, and he would actually stay awake with me to try to help me like stop having anxiety and hating myself, and help me get to sleep. And it never worked. And he just lost a lot of sleep too. Um, and he was sitting with me at 5:30 in the morning after not sleeping when I made that final decision. But he did drink a lot. So because he lived with me and I drank every day, he drank basically every day. And he drank a lot, like just as much as me or maybe a little less. He is able to say, "This is enough. I should switch to water," where I can't say that. So he would never push it too far, but he liked to party. That's what we would call it, like just us two in the house, like cooking dinner on a Tuesday. We'd call it partying. And we both loved to party that way every day and go out to brunch and drink there, and go out to bars and stuff. And our relationship really revolved around us drinking and the fake connection that came with it. And now that I have stopped, he like barely drinks. He probably has like 7 drinks a week max, and that's rare. Like he will have like 0
Yeah.
to 3 drinks per week, and he feels so much healthier. He was dealing with a lot of acid reflux and discomfort, and he was going to so many doctors and taking all this medication. And when he stopped drinking, that problem went away. So now he has associated it with like good health and feeling good. But yeah, without him, I think the whole journey would have been harder, and maybe I wouldn't have stopped when I did.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great that you grew together. I want to touch a little bit on, the fact that as a young girl, you went through bullying. That really can stay with a person. And so the first thing I want to say is I mean, I follow you on social media. You are the furthest thing from a girl that got bullied. I just want to commend you showcasing who you are, being so alive, trying to help others, and the confidence that you really exude because when we go through things as a child, whatever that looks like, those things can be really scarring and hard to overcome. And the strength you have in your message and just sharing this even today with our listeners gives people so much hope. And I just want to commend you on that. And then I want to ask you, really, you've kind of taken us through a lot of these sleepless nights, the lows of drinking. And I want to know if that was your lowest moment and tell me if it could be a mixture also with some of those childhood things. And I guess, not to be leading the witness, but was some of that all night depression related to alcohol also coming back to those feelings that you had from your childhood that kept you up all night? Tell us more about your lowest point, what you see that as.
I think my lowest point was the night that I stopped. And thankfully, it was my lowest point because it made me stop. And it was basically the same low point that I experienced before the 90 days, but I had to experience it twice. But I had a few very distinct points growing up. The worst bullying thing that happened to me was when I was a junior in high school, and I thought, maybe nobody remembers that they're supposed to hate me for I
Mm,
don't even know why. Like, there was no reason even.
mhm,
I just became a target. And I thought at that point I had been like hiding in the bathroom during lunch, or like a parent would pick me up or something and
mhm.
then bring me back. And I thought maybe I can go to the cafeteria and we'll just see. I'm just going to
Yeah.
sit with someone from my class that seems really nice. And I did. And every single person at the table got up and left as soon as I sat down, like in the movies, and I didn't
Yeah.
think that stuff happened for real. And then one girl came back, and I was like, "Oh my god, she feels for me. We're gonna be best friends forever. This is so wonderful." And she sat down across from me and she said, um, "Why don't you just go kill yourself already? Everybody hates you." And then she left again. And I never went back to the cafeteria after that moment. And despite that, I always had hope, like, for the future. I was so hopeful, like, I'm gonna go to college, I'm smart, I study a lot, I'm gonna get a good job, I'm gonna marry some guy that also has a good job, and things are just gonna be great one day. And that kept me from getting too sad and hopeless about it. And I had a very good relationship with my brother too, and he helped me. But um, when I was drinking, I had no hope, and
Mm,
that was why I think that's my lowest
yeah.
moment. I thought that I was just going to live the rest of my life like this, and thinking about never drinking again felt so sad and lonely and boring and weird, and I thought that I would be an outlier again, and that no one would want to, like, go out with me or hang out with me at, like, family parties, and I just felt like each option, drinking or not drinking, was so hopeless, and that's why I think that was the lowest for me.
That brought me a lot of pain too, just listening to that memory. And it's unfortunate that people can be so cruel. And a lot of this podcast is really about all the different forms of trauma and abuse that many of us have experienced growing up or even now. And that really brings me to asking you, what would you tell someone right now, a listener that is trapped in either an abusive relationship, in a bullying environment like that, or just feeling trapped in shame surrounding their addiction? What would you tell that listener?
So the two things that helped me the most were sharing it in Facebook groups. So I would tell people how I felt. I would tell them some of the embarrassing things, or I would about the suicidal thoughts. And everyone will come back and say, like me too. And knowing that you're not alone and that your horrible situation isn't unique can really help you feel better about it. And the second thing that has helped me is therapy, because you learn why you are this way, and you can learn how to like get yourself out of these really bad situations that seem just hopeless and that you'll be stuck there forever. So those two things are what I would recommend for somebody, and they work good for shy people too, cuz you can use like a fake name on Facebook.
Yeah. You're like a little ray of light, and you're giving me hope. Gosh, it's hard when we get stuck in cycles and we're trapped in situations we feel like we can't get out of. And I know I felt that way at multiple times in my life. I too was very unpopular. I grew up in Hawaii. I got bullied. I missed a lot of school. I was sick a lot. And I had, my trauma is molestation, abuse, all that, starvation. And when that period had ended, when I went back to school, I never felt like a normal person. So I missed a lot of school. I got bullied. I felt like no one liked me. And it was the loneliest thing, So I can relate more than you can imagine. And I feel for you. What would you say are some stigmas that kind of come around? Like you said, I noticed earlier you said, I was so worried people would say, "You're right, you're an alcoholic." And it's like, I mean, I know that did happen for me. Everyone was like, I mean, they knew. I was like, I just had billboard signs saying I have a problem, and embarrassed myself all around the town. But what do you think are the stigmas? What did you experience? Did anyone say that to you? Tell us more about that.
Surprisingly, no one said it to me.
Lucky you.
And yeah, people have seen some things.
Oh.
So I was shocked and I took it as a compliment. And it could easily be taken as like, maybe I wasn't that bad. Maybe I can drink again. But what people did say is, I don't understand why you can't ever drink again. Why can't you just have one drink? Or why do you have to drink so much? Why can't you just drink less? And I got a lot of pressure. Like I would have friends literally put their drinks like in my face, offering me a sip of it. And people stopped inviting me to parties, which was my fear. It came true. And I would see like the Instagram posts or the Facebook posts and just feel really sad. Like every fear that I had, then I believed that it was going to be factual because of that. And
Yeah, so thanks for telling me they didn't really think that of you and they were trying to force feed you alcohol. Now, I didn't have that, but I did have most people knew and were very happy that I got away from it. I laugh now, but it's kind of sad. But so a few handful of friends were like, "So when are you going to drink again?" Or, "Oh, but you're going to drink like later," And that was like, don't give me that hall pass. I don't want that, and I had to really learn how to navigate it. And you now said that people didn't invite you to some of those parties, but did anyone like kind of shun you, or was there a stigma around it, or has there been since then? Or if so, what did you do to kind of overcome it and just, bat it away?
yeah, people feel uncomfortable around me. And I can tell, and people, not everybody, but a decent amount of people distance themselves from me. And what I realized later on is I was probably the justification for them not being that bad. Like, at least I don't drink as much as Gill, or at least I'm not sloppy like Gill is. Like, she's the worst, I'm the second worst. But then I wasn't anyone's escape anymore. And yeah, no one called me an alcoholic, which was nice. They just tried to get me to drink. And they tried for a long time, and people would draw a lot of attention to it. At parties, like they would say, like, "You're still not drinking," and want to know why, like in front of everybody. And just those things made me feel very uncomfortable. People would hammer me about, like, "You sure you don't want wine? You love wine, though. It's your favorite drink. Like, you sure you don't want it? Like, I can get you some. You sure?" And it's like, leave me alone, everybody.
So
And
do you just not hang out with those people anymore? Because I want the listeners to know that that might happen, but they don't have to deal with it. And I stopped. Is that what you did?
yeah, for the most part, some of them are family.
Oh
So,
my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, but I've distanced myself
Yeah.
from the family members that are like that. But it is normal to lose friends.
Hmm.
Like you said, it is something that you can expect to happen because we try to surround ourselves with people that think our drinking is okay.
Hmm.
And a nice regular friend doesn't want to go out and binge drink
Hmm.
for 8 hours
Hmm.
and then fall down at the end.
Yeah, for sure.
They would think that was weird or boring,
Hmm.
but people like us
Hmm.
want to do that. So
Hmm.
they don't want to do that with a sober person
No,
because
that's
that
right.
makes them uncomfortable. So I completely understand why they stopped inviting me to things, and I don't hold it against anybody. And for people who are new to sobriety or considering it is really normal. And just think about, like, it's not you, it's 100% them and their discomfort with you not participating anymore.
Yeah. And your life's about to get a heck of a lot better. And I'm going to tell you, I was driving the other day and I was chatting with this really, to me, an inspirational woman that I've become friends with. And, I won't bore you with the details, but she was saying, I just want to be a really good person. And I know her kind of through business. And I kind of had this aha moment of like, it's so funny because if you would have went back with me 3 years ago, I wouldn't have been talking to that kind of woman. I would have been with that binge drinker at the bar, falling over after 8 hours. So while it seems so sad in the beginning and like you're losing a lot of things, what you have to remember is for everything you take away, you're going to gain tenfold. And you get to, be a whole new version of you that, again, I always say I think is more authentic. Before we get into more about what you're doing today and how they can find you, what I really want, and we have a few minutes to kind of cover this, would be, can you tell us just a little tidbit about the science, maybe a couple of key factors you think kind of point out that people don't think about when they're thinking? Because we've got a scientist on the podcast, and I can't let you get away without giving us some of that knowledge.
Yeah, I think that the most shocking thing for me to learn that helped me the most was that some people, their brain doesn't communicate with other parts as well. So even though you think, I should stop drinking, I have to drive, I should stop drinking, I'm at work, um, I should stop drinking, I have to get up early, you still don't. And then you hate yourself for that particular reason later on. And the reason that we can't stop is because even though we think it, that message doesn't go anywhere else. It just stays there. So you can have that thought, but your brain doesn't send it to the reward center. And the reward center just wants you to have one more drink for all eternity. So, because we don't have like a good, it's all about neuroplasticity. So, the ability for the brain to adapt to what's going on in the moment. And as you abuse alcohol more and more, you have less and less neuroplasticity. So, that just gets worse and worse. And that's why you can think it, like, I should stop drinking, but you don't stop drinking. And that helped me let go of, I'm a bad person. I'm a loser because I can't stop drinking. And that whole choice thing that comes up, like it was my choice to do that. And that means I'm bad. And no, it's because like my brain goes nuts when it has alcohol, and that's all it wants to do. And some people have naturally low levels of endorphins. And because of that, they're very sensitive to alcohol because alcohol causes a rush of endorphins. And for a normal person, they have a baseline level of endorphins and then they have a drink and it's normal. But for someone else, they have a low level and alcohol will bring it above normal, like shoot it up. And so it feels better and you're going to want to do it if it feels really good. So there's so many things that you can learn about that help whatever your problem is, for shame and whatever you guilt yourself over, learn about that thing and it can really just free you.
Absolutely. It not only free you, but when you're saying all this, it allows me for some room for some forgiveness
Mhm.
and for understanding of myself. And, I knew all that, not in the scientific breakdown of it, but I would always just tell myself, since then, at almost 3 years sober, like, you know what? I'm crazy obsessed about anything that I like, or anything that I want to do. And when I found alcohol, it was like, a love affair. And I was in hunt mode, forever for it. So I totally agree. And I definitely know, I too regulated for a little bit. Like I had a sober stint, and then I talk about it in earlier seasons of my podcast. And then I went back to drinking. And the first year I regulated for the most part. And then it was the second year, the last year and a half, that I went down into the gutter with the most insane amount of daily drinking and just horrible withdrawals at the end. And, it's all that trickery of the mind. But I know that, for me, like, how you're saying your friends wave the drink in front of you. And if I ever took that drink, I'd be right back to the races because it does something for me that I think it does differently than it does for others. And for me, I'll hunt that. And I can't have that in my life. I like to be free. So speaking of free, you exude freedom. And I'd like you to tell us a little bit about who Gill is today. Like, who are you today? What are you doing out there on social media? Share with us.
Yeah, so I work as a biochemist. I got a new really cool job in sobriety that I wouldn't have been able to just do well when I was drinking. Um, Marriage is a lot better. I'm happier. I sleep like a normal person. I don't hate myself every day. Um, and I just try to share everything that I can to free other people because that self loathing was so intense for me. And I just believed all those things like deep in my heart. And once I learned all the things that I know about alcohol and the science, I felt like it wasn't my fault anymore. And it just is something that, happened to happen to me. It's just what I got in life. And it's no reflection of me as a person. So I try to share, education, but also like stories and reality checks just to help people like make those connections themselves.
I love it. Tell us 3 daily practices you do that keep you centered, on track, and feeling kind of that you're on your baseline, ready to go every day.
So I love to start my day with an audiobook. I'm really obsessed with audiobooks right now. And just, I like to get educational ones and then have the real book be more inspiring ones. But I usually will go on a walk with an audiobook or listen in my car on the way to work. And I look forward to it.
Yeah.
And then I end every day at exactly 9:30 at night. I go to bed and I watch 30 minutes of cat reels. And it seems like so silly, but it makes me so happy to see all those cats. And then
I love it.
every day.
And it's
And
such a
then-
good routine, too.
Oh, it's so regular.
Yeah.
And then at 10 p.m., I spend 30 minutes connecting with my husband. So we will
Awesome.
like cuddle and be affectionate and talk about something deep or any form of connection with him. And we make that a routine from 10 to 10:30 every single night, no exception. And I think, yeah, my morning routine and my nighttime routine are so important. And if I miss them, like I really
You
feel it.
Yeah. I love it. I have a routine too, and it's maybe not your routine. I think I could do a better job at my nighttime routine, to be honest, because I do have kids. So, one's climbing in bed, we're doing things, but my morning is my jam, and that involves my workout and just I get up before everyone else and how I kind of ease into getting ready for my workout, and it's me time. And so I can relate to that. Okay, my dear, before we part ways, because it's been just an absolute pleasure having you as a guest, tell them, all the listeners, how they can follow you and kind of keep abreast, because I think this scientific information is great to have, especially coming from one of us, somebody in recovery and a woman that, is a pillar of strength in my eyes. So please tell us how they can find you, any kind of handles, anything you want to share.
Thank you. So sober powered on everything. I'm on Instagram. I have a Facebook group. That's my website. It's my podcast name. So if you just search sober powered wherever you are, you'll probably find me.
Awesome. Well, I know I'm going to be following you, keeping in touch, looking to you for all the latest in the research and just strength. I want to thank you for being a guest on our 4th season of Abuse Recovery Success. For those of you that are just tuning in, you can really catch up if you'd like with season 1, 2, and 3. You can start in season 4, but we do a lot of different things in this podcast. Not only do I share about my story with abuse, recovery, trauma, all of that, and the day-to-day life and how to manage things, but we have various guests like we just had today with Gill. We have guests from all walks of lives that have endured different things and that are showing strength and surviving, but truly thriving. Gill, I want to thank you so much for being with us today. I really, really appreciated hearing your story, and I know it's impacted the listeners.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me share it, and I enjoyed this conversation.
There's no